Welcome to the Wander Mode podcast, where we celebrate the fearless spirit of women embracing life's wanderings. Where every story is a spark of inspiration and reminds us that sometimes the most beautiful moments happen when we simply embrace wherever the journey may lead. Say hello to Ashley Crocker, the powerhouse of positivity and the guru of graceful motion. As a dedicated pain-free movement coach, podcaster, and blogger, Ashley brings a breath of fresh air to the fitness scene. Whether she's dropping wisdom on her blog or leading you through a lively coaching session, Ashley is on a mission to help everyone groove their way to a healthier and stronger life. Get ready to kick discomfort to the curb with Ashley.
Thank you so much. Excited to be here.
Well, let's go ahead and start with what inspired you to begin a career in health and wellness, specifically focusing on building strength and pain relief.
Okay, I'm going to start from the beginning. So, growing up, I grew up a dancer. I grew up active, but as you can expect with being in the performance industry, I was always very self-conscious of my body because I was in a tights and leotard all the time. And I was in the company, I was at the studio all the time. And I was never skinny enough. Everyone wanted to be as skinny as possible. And so I was always very self-conscious of that. And I also saw my mom always dieting and things like that from a young age that really impacted me. And throughout my teen years and early 20s, I was definitely somebody who over-exercised, underate. I didn't know much about how to fuel my body or anything. And I found CrossFit in 2012, and that was a really big life shift for me. For the first time, I was in a space where it wasn't about being as small as possible or as skinny as possible. People were lifting weights and it was empowering to get stronger and focus on something other than how your body looked. And honestly, strength training saved me. And from then on, I was I want to do this for my career. I wanted to be a coach from the beginning. I just didn't know how that was going to look. Started out coaching CrossFit group class and did that for 7 years. Along the way, I also got certified for nutrition coaching, started helping people with their nutrition as well. And then in 2020, I broke my ankle, and that was the first major injury I had ever had. And I had to have ankle ligament reconstruction surgery, went through physical therapy. And if anyone's been to physical therapy, you pretty much know how it goes. As soon as you can walk again, if you're post-surgery, or as soon as you can do your activities of daily living, they're okay, you're good to go. Just ease back into it. And I just remember getting in the car crying. And it's what do you mean? As somebody who was strength training in the gym 4 or 5 times a week and I can barely walk, and you're telling me just go back, ease back into it in the gym. And at the time, I was still coaching nutrition, and I was I've been in the fitness industry for 7 years at this point, and I do not know what to do, because I know if I go to a regular gym, they are going to know how to modify for me, which is great, but I want to make sure that I do this rehab right so I don't get re-injured, because that was one of my biggest fears, is having the same injury to my other ankle, because that is something that happens with the type of injury that I got. And so I felt kind of lost at this point. So I'm doing all this research and okay, what's going to be my next step? And end up coming across this company called Active Life. And they're a remote company, and they have coaching for individuals who are in that gap of rehab. They've finished rehab, but they are not back to doing what they want to be able to do yet. So I'm okay, I definitely need a coach for myself. And also I saw that they had coaches education, and they were educating coaches on how to be that person that helps people in that gap from rehab to doing the things you want to be able to do. And it was just a gut reaction. I knew, okay, this is what I'm supposed to move into. At the time, I was not coaching fitness at the time. I was still just nutrition coaching remotely. I was wanting to get back into fitness, but I wasn't sure what to do because I knew I didn't want to go back to coaching CrossFit group class, and I wanted to help people in a deeper way. And I was like, oh, this is it. Like nobody else is doing this. And I know that I can really make a difference with so many people because I had also remembered from coaching so many people throughout the years in group class that everybody has a history of injuries, whether it's knee pain, back pain, shoulder pain, or whatever. And it's like, yes, I knew how to modify, but what if the person was sick of modifying and wanted to actually solve their problem for good? I didn't have the skills to do that. And I knew that if I did, that I could really make such a difference and help people in a way that nobody was helping them. And so I went through that education program. It's 13 months long, taught by physical therapists. And it's really like a huge deep dive into how to properly assess people, how to work with people after physical therapy, and develop a customized program and work with them to get out of pain, but also to get stronger and increase their capacity to a point where they don't have to worry about their back going out if they have to pick up a piece of furniture or whatever. So that's kind of my story about how I got into coaching and then how I started working with people who are in pain specifically.
One of the things that I greatly appreciate about what you shared with the statement, I felt like I was never skinny enough. And watching your mom diet, I think so often as women, we have this perception that we need to starve ourselves in order to lose weight or have our bodies be the way that we're wanting them to be. But that could not be more opposite of what it is that we should be doing. Specific to that, what are you doing to combat some of that mentality when you're working with your clients?
Yeah, that's a really good question because it's definitely a widespread issue with women. And what I've found is just to get really curious with people and figure out where is that coming from? Because something that I've noticed after working with a lot of people is that a lot of people believe things just because they've always believed it. They don't really know where it's from or why they are thinking that way or if it's even rooted in truth. So if someone has that mindset of, oh, I want to be as small as possible or my body has to look this way. Okay, why do you think that? Can you tell me more about like where you think that belief is coming from or started? And, think all the way back to your childhood or growing up or whatever, and just getting curious about where is that coming from? And that usually opens up a lot of doors and we figure out, oh, I'm believing this thing because I always saw my mom doing this. I don't really know why I'm trying to do this or, whatever it may be. But I think that getting curious about where that's coming from is often really eye-opening for people.
I have a 3.5-year-old daughter, and I actually just posted a video of her taking care of her little baby dolls. And this reminder for me, like as she's taking care of her baby dolls and putting them to bed in her bed, whatever, she was literally going through our bedtime routine exactly as I do it. And it was one of those really powerful reminders of they're always watching, they're always mirroring, and how do you make sure that in taking care of yourself, that the messages that I'm trying to communicate to my daughter are also healthy. And what does that look like? How do we fuel our bodies? How do we take care of our bodies? How do we make our bodies stronger? Oftentimes she's downstairs when I'm exercising and she'll pick up a little tiny weight and I'll be doing something with a weight. But yeah, it's such a big responsibility as a mom, knowing that someone's always watching you and trying to communicate the right message. And I like that idea of what you're saying of going back to the source of the mindset.
Yeah, it's really powerful. And definitely that's one of the things I'm most nervous about with becoming a parent one day, hopefully, is like, wow, you really have so much influence on your child's life. It's a big responsibility, but yeah, I'm sure you're doing a great job raising up strong girls.
You'll never be perfect, and it's about definitely giving yourself some grace. But I know that since I've started my own strength journey since January, it's definitely been something that is very much on my mind, making sure that my decisions are reflecting what I would want to see her doing with her own body, you know? And that's the way that I'm trying to look at it for sure. Now, with the clients that you work with, is it specific to a very particular injury, a date and time in which something happened? Or do you also work with patients who are, let's just say, post pregnancy, or they've had a C-section? Or do you typically work with people that have come out of like a PT program specifically for an injury?
Yeah, so it really depends. A few of my clients, I have worked with them before pregnancy, after pregnancy, but I would say for the most part, it's going to be one of two types of people. Somebody who has either had surgery and went to physical therapy, or they just are having pain and they went through physical therapy and they're looking for help after that, as far as like what to do, how to get back in the gym. But honestly, I would say majority of people on my roster are people who have just had nagging pain on and off for a while. So think about like the person who has always had like knee pain when they run, or somebody who does CrossFit or some type of group class and their back is always hurting after they deadlift, or, you know, they can't do whatever movement without pain and it's just always there. And then they just get sick of it. They're like, I don't want to be dealing with this anymore. I want to go run a half marathon. I want to figure out this pain for good. And also with that type of person, why there's so many of those people is that they aren't quite injured enough for physical therapy, right? It's a very specific type of person that, not that gets accepted to physical therapy. There's lots of cash-based PTs now, but yeah, it's usually dictated by a lot of insurance and things like that. And so there are a lot of these people that are, okay, well, the physical therapy gave me some at-home exercises to do, but they're too easy and like I'm not making any progress, you know, that type of person. So I do have a lot of those types of people on my roster as well.
Could you share an example of a success story of someone that has come to you where you feel, wow, this is why I do what I do, so that I can see this sort of result with someone?
Yeah, definitely. So the first person that comes to mind is a client who I had. So she's actually one of my close friends, but she is a nurse. And a couple of years ago, she threw her back out when she was on a shift. She was like lifting a patient and, you know, did it the wrong way and had a really bad back injury. She had 2 slip discs.
Oh, man.
And it was really bad. And she went through physical therapy. She wasn't even able to work during this time because it was so bad. So she went through physical therapy and then she was still not able to do things without pain. She couldn't do the chores around the house. She couldn't pick up her kids, you know, things like that. So I took her on as a client, and how I even start working with people is we do a lot of assessments. So I kind of see where you're at. We do some flexibility and mobility testing to see where's your range of motion at. We do some strength testing to see where's your current strength at. And I remember with her specifically, she was not even able to do a step up on one of her legs. I can't remember which one it was, but she was able to do some step ups on her on one leg, and on the other leg, she could like barely even do it. And she was so upset. She was like, I cannot believe I am so weak. She was somebody who had lifted weights before. She had done strength training before her injury. And she was like, I feel so weak. It feels like I've never done any type of strength training. And that is also something that I see a lot of times too, is like people who neglect things like single leg work or whatever. And when we break it down, it's like, wow, I have no foundational strength. And so that was really eye-opening for her. And then another thing we found in her assessments was she really struggled with being able to hinge. So that was also something that we worked on. And so we took all this data, like, okay, here's where you're at. We're starting small, right? We're starting with a small step and we're building strength from here. And so we worked together for 8 months. And throughout that 8 months, she was able to get out of pain, gain strength. And I was able to, you know, get her back to where she can work out on her own with no issues. And she's still pain free today. She's able to work out how she wants, play with her kids how she wants, and is still pain free. So that's one that definitely sticks out in my mind. If she would have let that define who she is and not done anything about it, she could be in a lot worse shape right now. Instead of what she did was, hey, this is not going to be my story, and I'm going to make sure that I get this fixed so that it's not an issue still in 20 years. So yeah, that's definitely one that stands out in my mind.
I can definitely relate to that because I ended up with a C-section, and I felt very strong going into my pregnancy. And then post C-section, you have this big cut all the way across your ab muscles, and you use your ab muscles for everything. And I couldn't even make it to the end of the driveway to the mailbox for the few days right after, but similar to your friend, it's one of those situations where you realize how quickly this strong body can have something occur, and it changes everything. And now you have to figure out new systems and new ways of regaining that strength or getting your body hopefully back to what it was prior. And it's very humbling, especially for anybody who hasn't had a prior experience with something like that.
Yeah, it's definitely super humbling. Like I'll never forget after I had my ankle surgery and I got my cast off and went to physical therapy, and my calf was completely atrophied. It looked like a 90-year-old person calf, and it was hard to move my toes. I'm like, oh my gosh, like what has happened? It is an experience having an injury.
What would you say is the role of your mindset when you're having to recover from something like that? Because I'm guessing for you with your ankle, it's not only a lot of time and effort to show up at appointments or to do the little exercises at home, but how does mindset also play a role in what you do or just in anybody trying to recover from something?
Yeah, I love this question because mindset is such a huge part of it, especially when you're working through an injury. And that's a major thing that I work on with clients is your mindset around your recovery, because it can really determine how fast you recover. So you can approach your recovery in one of two ways. You can feel bad for yourself and not do anything about it, or you can try and remain positive. And so something that I work on with my clients is, I know you feel like you can't do all these things. What's in the front of your mind? It's going to be all the list of things that you cannot do without pain, right? But the cool thing about bodies and exercise is there's literally hundreds of different types of exercises, and there's actually so much that we are able to do. I remember when I was in my boot and cast for an ankle, I obviously couldn't do any lower body stuff, but I still did upper body and core workouts seated at home because that was crucial to mental health. And so I talk about with my clients, let's think about what you are able to do and focus on that. Like, yes, we can have those times where we feel our feelings and it's okay, yes, this sucks. We should definitely feel that, but also turning that around and saying, okay, these are the things I can do. These are all the things that are within my control, because even outside of movement stuff, we can control what our nutrition looks like, what our water intake looks like, what we're feeding our mind with, things like that. And so there's a big opportunity there when it comes to mindset. It's, I can let this break me down and make me feel even worse, or I can use it as a way to build myself up and focus on, okay, this sucks, but here's what's within my control and here's what I am able to do.
And as you said, too, if you focus on the things that you're able to do and you do those, like you sitting in a chair and doing upper body, inevitably that's going to improve your mindset because you're going to feel better for having done something.
Exactly.
So then it'll get the ball rolling.
Exactly.
Now, speaking of things that you can do, I am highly impressed at your pull-ups that I saw a video of you doing on Instagram. So tell me a little bit about what does strength training look like for you in your day-to-day routine? Can you break down what a week looks like for you and how you set goals for yourself? And then a little side note, like if someone wanted to work toward pull-ups, aka me, like where would you start with that?
Yeah, definitely. So it's funny you mentioned the pull-ups, because That was my first goal when I started CrossFit. I wanted to be able to do a pull-up. I remember my upper body was so weak when I started strength training. And, at this point, I've been strength training for 11 or 12 years now, I guess. And it took me almost a year to get a pull-up and then more months after that to do multiple. So it's definitely a skill and specific strength that has to be developed. But my own training, I typically do strength training 4 times a week. And I don't really do CrossFit anymore. I do a lot of just strength training based stuff. And I include some cardio once a week too, but I do a lot of single leg movements. I use a lot of tempo, and I'm trying to focus on what gets me the most bang for my buck in terms of time spent in the gym, because there was seasons of my life where I did spend a lot of time working out and all of that, but that's just not your reality as you get older. So it's like, hey, what's the best bang for my buck? And that's going to be a lot of unilateral strength training based work, using tempo, lifting heavy, things like that. And also make sure I'm recovering too. So outside of my workouts, I also like to hike outside. I like to rock climb. That's been something that we've gotten into recently. That's been super fun. And then also focusing on getting enough steps every day. And so I try to keep it as simple and effective as possible when it comes to my own training. And I feel like that works well for me. Now to answer your question about pull-up strength, this is a great question because it is a lot of women's goal to be able to do a pull-up. And so what I tell my clients, I'm like, hey, if we want to do a pull-up, we have to build that pulling strength. And this doesn't necessarily mean trying to pull yourself up on the pull-up bar. I mean, single arm dumbbell rows or single arm cable rows. Make sure we're pausing, we're using tempo, we are doing things like seated barbell pull-ups. We can do negatives where you jump up over the bar standing from a box and you lower as slowly as possible. Doing lat pull downs, doing negative focused lat pull downs where you do a fast pull and then slow return, things like that is going to be really helpful. And then along with pulling strength, you got to look at your grip strength too, and also your core strength, because that is also involved when it comes to doing pull-ups too. So I love farmer's carry marches or single arm farmer's carry to work on the grip strength as well, to be able to hold yourself up on the bar.
So I want to definitely chat about the amount of time that you're spending in the gym and what your workouts look like as you're getting older. But one question I had was, what are the advantages of singling out one leg or one arm to do that?
Yeah, this is an awesome question because actually I was somebody who barely did any single leg work until I got injured, other than some lunges every now and then. But it was really my injury and rehab that taught me the power of single leg work. And really, it allows you to focus on one side at a time. And the reason why that's beneficial is because sometimes we have one side that is a little bit weaker than the other or just moves a little bit differently. So when we are breaking it up side to side, we're able to focus on one side at a time. And the funny thing about doing a lot of single leg, single arm stuff is that doing that makes your regular bilateral stuff a lot better. So, for example, I ended up doing a heavy back squat several months ago, and I had not done any traditional back squats in years because I've just been doing single leg stuff, but I was still able to back squat over 200 pounds, even though I hadn't technically been back squatting and only been doing a lot of single leg stuff. And so that is also what I think is really cool about doing the single leg work, is that it improves your other movements as well. But I think that having a mix is good. But when it comes to nagging pain and injuries, the unilateral stuff is just really helpful to be able to focus on one side at a time and notice those things about your body and seeing hey, does this feel different on one side versus the other?
I'm in a program actually right now where the gal she does a lot of that. Now she hasn't really referenced the why behind it, more just the how, or selecting the right kind of weight, or what you should be feeling, what you should not be feeling, or whatever. I was kind of curious what were the specific benefits of that, because she definitely focuses way more on that than doing something with both at the same time. So
yeah. And
that
like
helps.
another thing about it is that our bodies are really good at compensating. For example, in a traditional squat or a back squat, if we have one side that's kind of lagging behind, we're able to hide it really well. And you're not really able to tell when you're using the two legs. But if you break it up into one side at a time, you can really tell, wow, okay, my left side sucks at this, right? And so then you have the opportunity to be like, okay, I'm going to focus a little bit more on this left side, versus if you're just doing the two-legged movements all the time and you have compensations and then all of a sudden you're in pain. So you can catch those things earlier if you are incorporating that unilateral stuff too.
That makes so much sense, because that's exactly what she was saying is, oh, you might notice that you could do 15 pounds on your right side, or 10 pounds, only on your left side, and you need to track that. And that makes so much sense now why that is.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I wanted to go back to you talking about how things have changed for you in terms of how much time you're spending at the gym and trying to get to more simpler routines. You seem like a very busy person. So you're podcasting, you're coaching. It looked like you got engaged recently, or
Yes, I
somewhat
did.
recently.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And you have dogs and all the things. So tell me a little bit about kind of the entrepreneur side of Ashley, and how you're managing all of these things at one time and still focusing on your strength and self-care.
It's definitely a ride. It's a wild ride being an entrepreneur. It's really hard. And I feel any entrepreneur you talk to is going to say that, yeah, it's hard to manage all the things. But something that I really prioritize is making sure that I'm taking care of myself first, because without me feeling good, nothing else is going to be done well, if that makes sense. Because when you do have your own business, especially if you're a coach, you are the business, you are the brand, and you have to show up excited and you have to feel good and you have to show up for your clients and all these things. And so I really prioritize, okay, number one, I know that to feel my best, I have to get in my workouts 4 times a week. And so I do really whatever it takes to make that happen. And my fiance gets kind of annoyed sometimes because he sees me being disciplined, but also I have to remind him, hey, fitness has been part of my life for like 12 years now. And so I think that's also something you have to take into consideration too, is that if you are somebody who's newer to exercise or newer to trying to develop these ingrained habits, it's probably not going to feel as easy. And that's okay. It just takes time. But for me, that looks like sometimes I have to get up at like 5 a.m. to do my workout, or I have to work out over the weekends or whatever. And being okay with having to be flexible. That's the other thing about being an entrepreneur too, is that you have to be flexible with your schedule sometimes. And yeah, okay, my ideal time to work out is 10 a.m., but sometimes that's not going to be realistic, right? So it's okay, I move it around and I just do it. And a lot of times I don't feel like getting in my workout before it's happening, but I play little mind games with myself. I'm like, okay, I'm going to at least do the warm up and then see how I feel. And then 9 times out of 10, after I do the warm up, I'm like, okay, I can finish, right? And so I think being flexible with your own training and just prioritizing it and making sure it gets done, like that's non-negotiable for me to be getting that in. And then honestly, some weeks it ends up being just 3 times, but minimum 3 to 4 times. And then also a big part of how I stay sane during the day is my walking pad in my office too. Because even though I help people with their fitness and all of that, like this job is sedentary. And so you have to be intentional about moving throughout the day. And that can be hard, especially in winter. So I'm in Buffalo, New York, and it really just started warming up a little bit, but it's been freezing for months and months, right? So I love my walking pad. I walk on it throughout the day, and that really helps as far as getting in movement throughout the day and things like that. But anyways, I think it comes down to, okay, I have to make sure I'm taken care of, or everything else on my plate is not going to be done well. And so, yeah, but it's definitely difficult.
What is a walking pad? I need to know more about that. I need this.
Yeah, so it's just like an under the desk treadmill. You can get it off Amazon for like $200. But yeah, it's basically just like this small little treadmill thing. You put it under your desk and you walk on it like 0.6 miles per hour or whatever. You go super slow. It also goes faster, but like if you're doing work, you have to go slow. But yeah, I love it. I mean, I tell people all the time, if you work from home and, work on the desk all the time, the walking pad is going to be one of the best investments you can make. It also helps your brain too, getting into movement while you're trying to work.
Mm-hmm. I love that. So I taught for 16 years, and that job, I was never sitting down. By the end of the day,
Right.
that's all I wanted to do was just sit
Mm-hmm.
down somewhere. And now it's actually why I've positioned my workouts at the end of my workday. When my husband goes to pick up our daughter, that's when I start it, when I go do my workout, because it just helps me to move my body after sitting for so long. I need to do that. And then also a standing desk or some sort of small portable thing to prop your computer on, huh?
Yeah, yeah. So on Amazon, they have these little laptop riser things if you don't have a standing desk. Definitely cheaper too. So you can just put your laptop on there. So it's
Okay.
like up at your height and it works really well. So I would definitely recommend it. I'm a fan.
Because when you were talking about getting your steps in, I'm like, okay, that is an area that I am miserably failing in. I have a marathon coming up in September and I'm doing
Okay.
real well on the strength stuff, but the steps part and the movement and the motion and the
Mhm.
miles, that piece I need to fix. And obviously that wouldn't fix it 100%, but that would definitely get me headed in the right direction.
Yeah, definitely. That'll help get some time on feet for sure.
If you were to say like this is the big hill I would die on, or like the big platform that I stand on, what would you say that is? What is at the core of Embrace Strength?
So, embrace strength. I wanted this to be my brand message because that is not what the media tells women. It's very much about be smaller, be as skinny as possible. Now the messaging is getting a little bit better, but I think for the longest time, it was all around not taking up space and being small and don't be too loud, like don't say too much, all these things. And I just say no more to that. Like every woman should embrace their own strength, whether that is in the gym, in life, in relationships, and taking up space and just not being afraid to be themselves and take up space in the room. So that's where that comes from.
Own it.
Yeah,
Own
exactly.
that space.
Own it.
So powerful. I love that message. So, with your business, how do you stay current? Because you have so much good information out there on your podcast and Instagram and your blog. I've looked at all of them and you have such great content, but how do you personally sift through it and decide this is what I need to push out there for the people that are following me?
So, when it comes to the things I put out in the world with content, it's really directed towards my ideal client. And I'm not talking to people about anything super high level or anything like that. I try to keep it really simple in terms that people will understand. And a lot of the times, I'm just pulling information from the things that I've learned in my certifications and stuff and how it applies to my ideal client. So I'm like, okay, my ideal client, what are they struggling with? What are they feeling? Things like that. And something I have to constantly bring myself back to is keeping it simple. So I've been a coach for 11 years now. And when you be doing it for so long, you can kind of forget. A general person may not know the difference between the different movement patterns. Like, what's a movement pattern? You know what I mean? And to me, that's so basic. But to the general person, they don't know the different types of hinge patterns, you know? So I think it just comes back to thinking my ideal client, what do they need to learn about? What do they need to hear? And that's how I determine what to put out there.
I love that because I would be the first person to say I'm very, very new in my journey and I would not even be able to be close to telling you what the different hinge patterns
Yeah.
were. But then so helpful at the same time because I think when people embark on these journeys, whether it's with nutrition or fitness or whatever, it's one of those things that I think you don't know what you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And there are very easy ways to hurt yourself, especially if you're
Mm-hmm.
talking about strength and adding weight and different movements that your body's not used to. And so, again, the more information and the way that you break it down, that's super helpful for somebody to be able to navigate. Okay, this is where I should be starting. This is what I need to pay attention to. Make sure that I'm not, doing it wrong right from the get-go, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Have you encountered any instances in the strength space specific to gender bias or any stereotyping, either through social media or like when you've been in the gym or in the coaching space in general?
I think this is getting better, but when I started coaching, there wasn't a lot of women coaches. I think that it's still primarily a male dominated field, but I feel like that is getting better. More women coaches are popping up. So I wouldn't say that I've experienced it a lot, just something that I noticed, but particularly in the beginning, it was mostly guys, not a lot of girls who were trying to do this as a career. But I would say now it's definitely getting a bit better.
I've definitely appreciated it as a female, seeing more female trainers out there that are focused on strength. For example, like the program that I'm doing right now, what I appreciate is, as a female, okay, so if I'm looking at her and she's super fit and super strong and she's only picking up 15 pounds, then that means
Yeah.
that I definitely should not be picking up 15 pounds, right? But sometimes when we're watching male trainers and they're picking up significantly more weight because they're a strong male trainer, it can leave me feeling a little lost sometimes on what should I be picking up? What should I be doing in
Right.
relation to that person? Because I feel like I'm just a drastically different individual.
I think that also kind of comes back to knowing your body and knowing your level of training. We call that your training age, which is basically how long have you been strength training or working out or whatever. And with my clients, I am always a fan of we're starting light and we're going to keep it around a 6 or 7 intensity on the 1 to 10 scale. And if we need to drop weight, we do it and just do body weight, right? There's like still a lot to be said for even just doing body weight exercises, doing tempo, things like that, and building strength from there. I know that a lot of beginners to strength training can get frustrated with, oh my gosh, I'm only picking up 10 pounds or whatever, but it's you progress so fast when you're a newbie. We call those newbie gains. And so you're never going to progress that fast as if you're a beginner. And so just enjoying that time, and like also you have a big opportunity when you're a beginner to really nail in your foundation and move well. And going slow is a part of that, and making sure, okay, I am doing things right. I'm feeling it in the right places. And that's going to set yourself up much better for the future if you have that strong foundation built. So if you are somebody who is newer to strength training and you're like, man, I wish I was lifting heavier, enjoy where you're at. You're going to get there. If you keep going, you will get stronger. And that's also the cool thing about strength training too. It's just enjoying where you're at and being like, hey, I'm making progress and getting stronger. And my getting stronger is going to look different from whoever else you see, right?
One of the beautiful things too that I think about strength training is that it impacts everything you do.
Mm-hmm.
Like from skiing to, I want to go do this marathon, or even just I need to carry my 50-pound kiddo up the stairs because they're tired or they fell asleep in the car, whatever. It genuinely impacts everything, but also makes it so much more enjoyable because you have the strength to do all of the things.
Exactly. Picking up heavy luggage, carrying all the groceries in one trip, like all of it is so much easier when you are strong. And that's the beautiful thing about strength training too.
Let me end with this question. What advice do you have to offer other women who are aspiring to start their own business, specifically in the health and wellness sector? Because you're kind of this positive ray of energy. And I really love your message of embracing strength. And I feel like it just comes through in everything you do. And so what advice would you offer to other women who are wanting to do the same thing?
Well, first off, thank you for your kind words. So, advice I would give to other women who maybe wanted to get in the coaching space or have a career in fitness, it would be a couple of things. So, first off, to get support and help. Because another thing about being an entrepreneur is that it is very lonely and you have to get support or you are not going to make it. Like just simply said, like you have to have support through a mentor, a coach, somebody to help you. And you just have to accept that having help in your business is a business expense and it's probably going to be your biggest expense if you don't have a brick and mortar. And that's just how it is. So get ready to ask for help and hire help through mentorship. And then the other piece too would be to get as much experience as you can with figuring out who you like to help. In the beginning, you don't really know who your ideal client is. You know, it's probably anybody who wants to make a change, right? And that's okay. You need to work with many different types of people to figure out, oh, I love to work with this type of person, right? And also, that changes over time too. But getting that experience in the beginning is really important. So I guess my top two things would be to get support and help through a mentor, and then also get experience working with people. And that will help you figure out who you want to serve.
I'm assuming you've worked with several mentors. How did you end up picking who helped you?
Yeah, so I've had several different mentors throughout my journey. And the one I have right now, I had been following her for a while. And honestly, I just felt like she was speaking right to me. I feel like when you're picking a mentor, it's really important to hire somebody who you really resonate with their message and how they run their business, right? So I picked her because she has been in the health and fitness space for 14 years. She's had $1 million year before. She's had 30K months for over 3 years. So she has that experience under her belt, but also how she speaks to her ideal client. I felt like, wow, she sees me, like she's speaking to my problem, you know, like I resonate with that. And I think that's really the biggest thing, is to have somebody who has a business that, hey, I would want a business like hers, but also I resonate with the way that she's speaking to her audience.
I would definitely agree with that. I'm in a season right now where I'm having to select my next coach for my next stage of the business. And it is crazy how when you do start following people, the right people will literally feel like you're in a conversation with them or like they're in your head.
Yeah, exactly. It's like
how did they know that?
Yeah, it's so crazy. Like before I hired my current mentor, I binged her podcast. I'd follow her on Instagram, but I would say her podcast is really where I was like, wow, like she sees right through me. And so that's just, it's powerful, you know? And I think that's always a sign. It's, wow, she's speaking right to me. I bet she could help me, right?
And I'm sure that there are people that are listening right now that feel like, wow, Ashley spoke right to me when she was saying blah, blah, blah. So where can people find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram. My handle is Ashley Crocker 127. My podcast is called Embrace Strength. And then my website is embracestrength.co. You can fill out my contact form, email me, send me a DM, all the things.
All the things. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me today. It was a real pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me. I loved it.
Thanks for wandering with me today. If you were inspired by this episode and think it would ignite a spark in a friend, don't hesitate to share. And if you're craving more from the Wander Mode community, hop on over to Instagram at WanderModeCo. Meet you in the next episode, and until then, wander on.